is going to be on the past and future of Web3 games. And we have Siddharth Menon from Tegro and WazirX. Siddharth, over to you. Thank you so much.
Hello. Can you guys hear me? Hey. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Yes. How many game devs do we have here? Come on, that's it? Come on. Game devs. OK. And how many of you guys are building for Web3 now? Or want to build for Web3? Perfect. Perfect. So, where are we? OK. So we're going to talk about something about past and future of Web3. So in 2018, when I was talking to a lot of game devs and trying to convince them to build for blockchain, build for crypto, build a crypto game, they just hung up on me, right? They said, crypto is Ponzi scheme, crypto is illegal, and it's not going to work out. It's not for games. And I'm very happy to see this, right, where it's like a dream come true, where people are taking Web3 games more seriously and seeing the potential of what is happening. Lucky for me, I was able to work with a lot of game devs back then, along with WazirX, obviously. So while I was in WazirX, I was also interested in games. And there's a lot of learning about how games have evolved. Today, what we see as a hype cycle or maybe a buzz around Web3 games, we have seen that in 2017-18. And there's also a learning what happens when the market cycles change, right? So though the title says future and past, I think I'm more focused more on the learnings of what we have learned and sort of help you guys build the next big Web3 games. Yeah, so a little bit of me. So I'm Siddharth, co-founder of WazirX. We started WazirX in 2017. WazirX was one of the smallest and the youngest exchange back then, hardly did 1 million there. But we really innovated ourselves. We built the world's first P2P order matching exchange after the banking ban. Most of you guys don't even know about banking ban, so we lived through that to build exchanges. Then within, I think now we do about close to 8 billion in monthly volumes. And the next big exchange, which is BSE, Bombay Stock Exchange, does 18 billion in volume. Our goal was to sort of break that record, but not yet. I think it's too early even now. And bulk of the INR liquidity actually comes from WazirX. We do about 60 to 70% of that. So there's a lot of learning about how market works, how Web3, people, actors within Web3, what are the behaviors of that? And we are also taking that to game level and trying to see how do we make it a bigger ecosystem. So at the bottom line of everything, right, what I've learned in this past, we're all focusing on Web3 games. We think games is the next big thing, or the Web3 game is the next big thing. But eventually, the learning is that the game assets are becoming the next big investable class. And why game assets in general, right? So it's very easy for people to understand what these games assets are. Especially, suppose if I were to explain you guys what is Bitcoin or what is Ethereum, I need to start explaining to you guys about, or anybody, about what is money, how money works, the concepts of money, to explain Bitcoin. If it is Ethereum, I need to explain about, hey, this is decentralized computation, there's trust, there's smart contracts, and all those things, and that's why Ethereum is useful. But when I, or any one of you guys explain to anybody about digital assets like land, digital assets like in-game water, digital assets like in-game medkit, or any of these kind of assets, it's much more easily relatable. People understand these things because this is something that they have gone through it, right? So even within games, whether they have played games or not played games, everybody understands this scarcity of land. So these are concepts that is already there, and that's one of the reasons the entire NFT marketplace. There's a lot of excitement around NFT, primarily because the use cases around NFTs are something that you and me understand. Art is something that you and me understand. Game assets is something that you and me understand. And what we believe is, game assets is going to become the next big one, primarily because now, as and when the adoption goes up of the crypto, right, games and these asset market classes are easily adoptable. So we're going to talk about a few things around this, mostly around economic cycles. And we'll talk about, most important part, everybody has the same question saying, hey, these assets already exist today, right? You have tokens, coins, marketplace that already exist today in games. So what makes Web3 assets so different? So let's see. Well, a few things. First thing is tokenization, right? So we are going through a tokenization of, it's a revolution that is happening. This tokenization of everything that we can think about. One is, tokenization of art, tokenization of game asset, tokenization of currency. All these things are now coming on board, right? And what is this tokenization? So before, even it's basically a presentation of a data that can be easily made into something that I can easily transfer, own it, and everybody recognizes, right? It's a protocol like ERC20. All these token protocols are simply a method in which I can have, like in real life, I can own a phone, I can own something and it's there in real life, right? But in metaverse or in virtual, how do I tell people that I own this, right? How do I tell people that I actually own a digital cap? It's very difficult. And that is where this whole tokenization is coming in, which is bringing in the ownership layer in general. Then we have transparency into supply. Previously, if you are playing FIFA or any of the games, right, so you don't know why a certain character has become expensive. Is it become expensive because there is low supply of that particular character across the game, or is it only for me? So there is a lot of this opaque data that is not shared with us to even know what is happening in the economy, right? So economy needs more transparent data that is there, which is what is changing. Then obviously blockchain, we'll all talk about. Blockchain is think about more of an open database, which you cannot edit in the past. And there's a lot more people who are validating the data that is coming into it. So it just makes it much more trustworthy data that you work with. And obviously, there are a lot of fancy names, GameFi, Delphi, and many other things that just makes it look cool. So let's go back and try to understand. So here is where we have the supermarket model, or I call it the market store model, which is where most of the Web2 games are. So what happens is you have a store, okay, which is run by the devs themselves, and you do a sell. So what happens is when you sell the asset, you're selling to the one player, right? And the economies are usually within the player and the store. So suppose if I buy too much of carrot, doesn't affect the economy for the other player. So it's very isolated economy, right, when you think about it. And also the floor price and all this pricing is set by the store and not by the economy itself, not the other actors, not the players who are setting the pricing for this. So there is the entire ecosystem is on in a very isolated manner. It's something like when you go to a supermarket or you buy an iPhone, you buy iPhone 15, whatever that is, right? The store guys doesn't care about what is the price of iPhone 15 after you buy it, right? If you bought it for 1 lakh, if it's going to be 50,000, he doesn't care about it. He just did that transaction, right? For him, it's just that transaction. So he doesn't care whether, if it's an investor who's buying in, whether there's a value for him in the long run, because it's more inflationary in nature, right? So it's depreciating. iPhones are different because there's going to be another new iPhone 16 that is coming on 17, 18. So the value goes down drastically. So the store guys don't care about it. They just care about how much more I can sell, which is the content treadmill that they work on, right? So this is typically what the Web2 economics looks like. Going to the other part, where we are talking about the Web3 part of things, right? So Web3 part, we have a more open economy, it's open economy, typo there. It's more open economy. Open economy is where every actor has the same rule to play, right? So he has the same rule. So there's even the rules are same for everybody, and the floor price is decided by the bid, the person who is ready to buy at the highest price, and the person who is ready to buy at the lowest price. So these guys actually decides the pricing of the economy. And if suppose there are guns in the market, okay, and if I buy too much of the gun from the market, it affects the supply for the rest of the actors within the economy. So what you do within the game, the purchases, what you do, literally affects the entire economy that you play with. So it's a very open economy. And plus, here, you need the right incentive for people to hold on to your assets. Why would they sell? All those sort of things. But the very important difference that you saw, here the economy is with everybody, and the rules are same for everybody. And wherein in the Web 2 part, everything was isolated with the store as well as the player. Again, a small brief, just to go through this again. In the Web 2, it's more designed for players. Okay, the Web 2 economics is designed for players to play more. And in Web 2, usually you have the 1% or 3%, depending upon the genre of the game, doing the purchase within the game, right? So they are the only ones who participate in the purchase or the economy of the game. So only 1 or 2% actually participate in the economy of the game. The Web 2 economy is not designed for traders or investors, right? So if I'm an investor, I would not buy anything in asset because it's anyways going to be depreciating. So there's no value for me to buy. Then again, it's driven by collectibles and rarity, right? Like so, people who want that collection are the ones who actually go behind and start buying these things. And of course, mostly the devs make money. Last year, I think the entire game revenue was about some $200 to $250 billion. And the money made by players was close to $100 to $200 million, right? So you see the disparity. The players are not making much money. It's only the devs who are making money. That is one. In the Web 3, it's more real life. It's more real life. Just like in any economy, there is give and take. There is producer, consumer, investor, trader, who all play a role. And everybody has an economic upside to it. And everybody has an economic incentive to actually be an actor and do what they want to do within this economy, right? There is the asset holds an intrinsic value. It's not vanity. It has more utility within the product. It has some usage within the product, and that accrues more value for the assets. And again, supply is controlled by math. In Web 2, the devs can easily change the supply, change the inflation of the token, do whatever it takes. But here, it's all math. When it's math, it's more transparent. It brings more trust. And that's how you build an open economy. So this is a very important part a lot of people do miss out on. And everybody's coming from Web 2 background, do focus a lot on gamers, right? But there are very important two actors within the ecosystem when you're building Web 3 games. So one is obviously the gamers themselves, right? I call them the asset producers. So they play the game to get some incentive. This incentive can be some tokens that they generate, or some mechanics where there is some equation to their time that they're giving to the economy, right? Just in real life, if I work at a place, I do get paid for something, right? So there's hourly rate, whatever that is, right? So there is an equation in the economy where these guys play a very important role, where we call them the asset producers. Obviously, if you want them to keep playing that, you need better games, better retention, all those sort of things. So game has to be great. Second is traders. These are things that people don't think about. Traders are very important in games, in Web3 games, also in real life. Traders are the speculators in the market, right? Who would speculate, who will bet on up and down of the market, right? So, for example, just in real life, when you have the oil market, the whole crude oil market, when you find a new ore, the moment you find a new ore, the prices drop immediately, right? Temporarily. This is where traders actually drive the price of the market. Actually, the consumption rate is still same, but you'll see suddenly the prices going up and down. There's a news on finding a new ore, and the prices goes up. That is where traders play a role. They bring in more liquidity. They bring in more, volume to the asset class, and they play a very important role. So you have to think about building your game for traders as well. What they need is transparency into how the supply looks like. They need transparency into how the asset is performing, and many things around it, based on which they do the betting. When I say betting, don't make it sound like a normal what we know as bet, but these are simple things like trades are more of up and down cycles, where they take positions based on the speculation of the assets. Then comes investors. Investors are also very important in a game or in any economy. So just to give you an example what they do. Let's say you have 100 units of token. Now, what investors do, they see, hey, you know what, this token is going to go big, this token is very powerful, or this is the use case, this is the back, or these are the utilities. He say, hey, you know what, I'm going to buy 40 of these tokens. Okay, now he's going to buy for long term. What happens is there were 100 tokens that was in circulation. When I say circulation, it's in the market. Anybody can buy and sell, it's there in the order book. But this investor buys 40 of that. Now what happens, he says, I'm not going to sell it for another year, which means he takes the liquidity out of the market, right? Circulating liquidity out of the market. And that's very important because now you are only left with 60 token. And like that, when investors more come in, they take out the liquidity of the market. And it's a cycle, okay? So it's not going to be like only one way. It's buy and sell happens. But this is the role that investors also play. On the long term, you have more circulation, more tokens out of circulation, and less token in circulation. And investors are the guys who actually support this, and it helps you build long-term demand and long-term stability. When we say a token has getting more matured, is that the distribution has happened to more of investors, and the supply, the circulating supply is out of the market. So that is where investors plays in. So when you're designing a game, you have to think about these three players very, very, very closely and design your economics around it. So just going a little more deeper into it, what do these investors and traders need, right? So one is obviously high volume trade. Only when you have high volume trading is when there is confidence for them to deploy. Now, there's a difference between should I deploy $10,000 or should I deploy $50,000 or should I deploy $1 million? That confidence comes based on the volumes. If you have seen across, if you guys are new to crypto, everybody is talking about ye token ne itna volume kiya, this token did so much volume, Bitcoin did so much volume. All these volumes are attraction for the traders and investors to be participating in it, right? Then we have liquidity. I think even in the previous panelists, people were talking about liquidity. Liquidity is a very important factor when it comes to building a marketplace. Marketplace is all about building liquidity to start with, right? So if I'm buying something worth $10,000, I should be able to sell my $10,000 anytime I want, right? If there is no liquidity, I'm at loss. So liquidity is very important. And we'll talk about it furthermore. Then the velocity, right? Velocity is another very important. This is something that these economic models are not something new to this. It's been there forever. So this velocity is the speed at which the asset actually circulates within the economy. Okay. So just applying some basic models that exists in the real finance and putting that into game. So I've basically simplified it just to give you a basic hierarchy of needs. So at the bottom, what we are talking about is the need-based approach, where the bulk of the need happens. Then we have want-based, where you have the ownership layer coming in, and then the achievement, right? You get something more special. Like in the crypto space, we say owning a Lambo, right? So not everybody gets a Lambo, but that is the top side of the entire pyramid, right? So how do you build that pyramid? And how do you build an economics around it? So putting this into games, so just to get you guys take some time to understand. So at the bottom layer, we are talking about the utility layers. This is the high frequency layer where most of the assets are needed to actually play the game, right? So these are like the fundamental of this, of your economy. So we talk about food, water, medkits. These are like basic examples of what comes into the bottom layer. That's the need of the economy. Then comes the ownership, right? So ownership is, hey, can I have one more gun? Can I have, house, farm, all these other ownership layer, which is good to have, but still not critical for your economy to run, right? So this is where probably people who have the money probably will buy it and use those economies, play that role there, ownership. And of course, the collectibles, right, where you talk about the skin, where you talk about a hat or a shoe or something very special, where he feels empowered saying, this is special for me, right? A lot of the Web2 economics is built around the top side of it. The Web3 economics is even bigger than that. That is the second and the third, right? The bottom two part is very important that you have to think about. Also, when you think about the fungibility, when you're designing an asset, you have to think about the fungibility of that as well, right? So when you're talking about high-frequency tokens or high-frequency asset, it has to be much more fungible in nature, which creates the liquidity, which creates more velocity within the ecosystem for it to run. And as in when we go up up the pyramid, you have rare Lambo or rare cap or a rare board ape, whatever that is, right? So it comes into rarity, and that is where your NFT plays in. So you have to understand how you design your economy, how you balance out this really well. So diving into this, so this is something that being learning for like long time and sort of put this into generations of economy. And I've seen games going through this. This is since 2018. So we are just trying to put this together as a learning. And let's talk about it, right? So generation 1 are most of the games which are coming from Web 2, they're NFT only. When I say NFT only, they suffer from poor liquidity, they suffer from low trade frequency. These are things that is very inherent to a lot of games. Today, a lot of games that is coming today in an NFT, only NFT games, are not the first guys to do it. In 2018, we have seen this happen, and during bear market, the market completely dries off because there is no trading happening, because there is lack of liquidity. So these are like factors which basically kills the economy and thereby killing the game itself, right? So there are a lot of games in 2018 you will see who doesn't exist today. Then comes the generation 1. Generation 1 is where you have a combination of FT and NFT. If you had just seen the previous pyramid, if you have the right balance of fungibility and non-fungibility, is where you have the economy being built in a more sustainable way. So what is the focus there, right? The focus is to build more liquidity because you have the fungible layer at the bottom. You can build liquidity easily. By design, it's easy to build. So I'll give you a very simple example. So say, for example, you have $10,000 and you want to buy land. And these are NFT lands. All lands are different. And every land is $1 each, which means what? You have to buy 10,000 different lands when you want to deploy $10,000, right? Now, if I tell you, hey, let's sell all your lands, 10,000 lands, you have to find 10,000 buyers who are buying different lands from you in the space. So there is friction to buy and sell that $10,000. Now, if I tell you, now do this with 1 million, you'll say, thank you, I'll not do this, right? Because by design, it's not scalable for liquidity. You can't scale liquidity in that design. So a typical example would be, hey, if I were to do Ethereum, by design, just by design, I can buy $1 worth of Ethereum, $10,000 worth of Ethereum, or 1 million worth of Ethereum in one order, right? It's by design, it's possible. You can scale that. Tomorrow it becomes 1 billion. By design, it's possible to scale it. So that is liquidity where you are designing the asset by itself, right? Second, generation 2 comes the predictable supply. And these are very fundamental things, right? But very sad to see that a lot of Web 2 games don't do it. Right? So for a typical example is Axie Infinity. A lot of people who've been following Axie Infinity, they have something called as SLP. So how it works is if you have $10,000 players who are playing it, you get 10,000 SLP coming out, right? Then if you have 1 million players coming in, you have 1 million SLP coming out. And then say the user count goes down to 100K, then you have 100K coming out. But there is an oversupply of 1 million SLP in between, right? So if anybody, as an investor, if I'm buying into this SLP, I've lost all my value because of so much supply in the market, right? So that's a very bad design from a supply point of view, right? So but in Bitcoin or Ethereum, doesn't matter whether you have one miner who is mining Bitcoin or 10,000 miners or 1 million miner, the supply curve is very stable, right? So there's something called as network difficulty that basically handles it, right? So there are 3 types of supply curves. One is a deflationary curve, which is more like, you have first more supply coming in, but later on the supply rate goes down. So depending upon what your asset is, like if your asset is called gold, digital gold within your game, or digital gem, you can design it more of deflationary economics around it. Then you have inflationary economics where you have less, the rate of production is very low, the mining is low, but eventually it goes up. It is characteristics for good currency. So if you're building currency where you want to incentivize people to keep selling their asset or moving to the next asset, this is where you design these kind of assets. Then you have circulatory supply. Circulatory supply is more like for essentials, like utility essentials, like water. If you have 10,000 users, you should still have the demand and supply. If you have 1 million users, you should still have demand and supply, right? There should be enough water to play the game. So just like in real life, you have something called as population index or FSI. These are indexes that is used to say, hey, if the population index is X, then so much water should come to the city. If there is too much water coming or too little water is coming, then there will be famine. So you design economics based on these metrics, which is called the circulatory curves, wherein you have a fixed supply, but it always goes up and down, and it's good for traders, probably not good for investors. Then we have something called as service economy. In real life, we have three important economies. We call it the producer, consumer, and the final one is the service economy. Service economy is very simple. Say, for example, if I own a farm and I do my own farming, fine. But what happens is now a new guy comes, he can't own a farm, right? It's too expensive. So what he says, hey, you know what? I will work for your farm for a fixed salary. So that is where its service comes in. I will pay a fixed salary to somebody in the real farm, and they work for me and probably do a production of, say, 1 lakh or 2 lakhs rupees worth of production. So that's a service economy where the people work for others to do production. So even in factories, in real life factories, this is how it works. And even in the gaming economy, this is how it works. Guilds do it in a very good way. Guilds have shown us how the service economy works, but it's also evolving, where these things can become the next big thing. Then you have the generation 4. Every assets have governance coming into it, where we talk about where people who are holding the assets can demand the governance of, like, how much should be the inflation, how much should be the deflation, what is the impact within the game. They can actually vote for it and decide for it. And this can happen season to season. So in Web 2, mostly season 1 and season 2 is change in content. But here the change could be more of economic rules that can change. And this happens in real life again. You have the budgets and things which basically change the reforms around it. So this is Tegronomics. And just in case you guys missed it, virtual economy is the game. So if you really understand this part really well, you can build your Web3 game really well. So if people are basically playing the money game with your game. So game layer is the bottom part, but the virtual economy is the most important part, which attracts all three actors together in sync. So yes, so whatever we have been learning, right? So in 3 or 4 years, what I've been learning, now we are putting together and we are calling this Tegronomics. This is an open source economic templates that we are going to give it out to everybody else. And it's a very important thing. What we believe is our learnings has to go to everybody, and everybody should be building Web3 games from India or from everywhere else, right? It started by me, but I'm very happy to have a lot more very great contributors coming in. People are actually contributing to build this, formalize it, go into more depth of it, and rewriting from a Web2 studio point of view what everybody sees and rewriting it. And hopefully we start a movement where we are creating a more open source economy templates for anybody to get started with. So that is Tegronomics. And yes, and we are also helping more developers come to Web3. We're starting a small grant to start with. We will help. We'll try our best to help everybody one-on-one to sort of build better economics, build better Web3 games, and and grow everybody in this ecosystem. So yeah, that's it. Open to questions, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Siddharth. Any questions?
Go for it.
Yeah.
So, what you mentioned is probably the early stages for a metaverse, right?
Not tokenomics. So tokenomics is for a token. I would say economics.
The economics.
Yeah.
So, I think what you are sort of alluding to is the economics for a full-blown metaverse that works as a parallel economy.
Exactly. And game by itself is a microeconomy. So if the best part is the microeconomy is now interacting with a bigger economy, right? Which is the fiat world where we are talking about, which was not the case before, right? So for example, just a simple example is how Indian economy is interacting with the global economy, right? So that is how the Indian economy, first you have to figure your economy first, and it should be such that it is able to interact with the outside economy as well, right?
Absolutely. So there are 5 variants of currencies, right? You have the token of the game, you have the stable coins, you have CBDCs, you have the fiat currency, and you have the cryptocurrency, which is the bitcoins and the ETHs of the world. So could you just go a little bit in depth as to how, because I believe what you're talking about is the token side of things for the in-game part. How do you think in the longer vision and the longer scheme of things that this token would interact with, say, a stable coin or a cryptocurrency, you know, from a long-term perspective?
Yeah, so there are two parts to it, right? One is within the game, it's not necessarily just like how previously we used to have. Not necessarily you need to have a currency token, okay, first of all. I mean, it's not a mandate to have it. A lot of people think that you should have a token, but that is because there is nothing else fungible for them to, do a fundraise. But if you have assets as fungible, it's easy to fundraise even now. That is one part of it. So it's like, every company having their own token versus, discarding INR. INR is already there. Everybody, it's an accepted currency. Let them do their work. You just do your work, right, in terms of creating more assets. So that is one part of it. But when it interacts, the interaction is more at the market level. It's more of a demand-supply level. In simple as in real life, there is foreign reserve, how the RBI decides how much to keep, what to do. All those things are more at an interactive demand-supply level, which is if the economy is really good, then more capital is coming in. If the economy is bad, the less capital coming in. So it's a very simple economics. These are not even, very high-level things. These are very basic things to get started with. And this is how you even build your game as well.
Any other questions? Your mic there, please.
Even he has a question.
You have a question? Can I go there and then come to you? Sorry.
Hi, Siddharth. Thank you for the insightful talk. This is Nihans from Crafton. I wanted to understand a bit more on how, for a gamer, the presence of investors for in-game assets would be a positive, right? Because if I'm a gamer, I'm not really sure how I would benefit or how my game experience would improve. I'm not talking about those who are, playing play-to-earn games, but if I'm a gamer who's interested in playing really good games and really good stories and really good experiences, how does that really help me?
Yeah, so one very important part is it's not important that every game has to have a Web3 layer, investor and trader layer. So if it's about, if I like Half-Life and I can buy it and play it, I don't want these things to come in, right? So that's a different genre of games. What we are talking about Web3 is a very different genre, whereas a real economics is coming in. Just like, what we've been talking about, like some games have better physics, some games have better realism. This is reality coming into games, and it need not be that all games have to be there. Like today, not all games have to be free to play, right? So similarly, here also, you don't need every games to happen, but if it happens, it should be done in a way which is sustainable, and you have to think about all three guys.
When we talk about economics, economy itself is a very complex topic. Like it needs constant upgradation. We need to see how the things are changing in the market and then have to evolve it. Now, when we are building economics for the game, would a standard templates or ready-made template right at the start would help them stretch to, let's say, 5-year tenure, 10-year tenure? How things would evolve in those modules over the period of time when the economies will become more and more complex, just like how the countries work?
Can you just put it? Yeah, so that's a very important point, because see, you can't be God and deciding the economy because there are different actors playing into it, right? So you need a more decentralized way of doing it. To start with, you start with the fundamentals of things, but eventually, the slide, yeah.
Slide.
To start with, you do the fundamental templating, which is the most important basic templating. But how it evolves is, let the economy evolve it for you, right? The last part, the governance, is where the people actually evolve it. So in 1947, or whenever we got our freedom, or however we did it, our economy has, rules have been changing over so many years, right? And you need to create a platform for that to happen. So it has to be adaptive where it will happen. So if we did a bad, say a decision on how the template should be, people will say, vote for it and say, this is bad, and vote it out and change it. As simple as that.
Okay, thank you. Sid will close because...
Okay, one last question, I think, like...
Thank you. Great talk. Just one more question. So, till now, while we're talking about economics, we've been talking about games like Farmville and all. But what about other RMG kind of games like fantasy gaming, something like Dream 11? How would the economics work for that? How would we design sort of the token value?
Yeah, I mean, we have to look at every game to decide it, how to do it. So we are working with different games, different genres of game. For example, one shooting game we are working on, trying to see how we design the economics of it. What is the basic layer? What's the basic want? How how do you classify these things and make sure there is an economic transaction that is happening between them, an incentive transaction that is happening between them. Now, it's very difficult to say here and say this is how it will be. It's a very game-specific thing. Like, for example, the Tower Quest game that we've been working on, we had to completely reimagine the way these cards are being built. Right? Instead of having millions of cards, we said, hey, we will have 5 cards, but a lot of them. And in a game, you can have maximum of only 10 cards, total of 10 cards. So you need to know your combination of what your strength cards are. So these are ways where we could do it. And the most important part, because these are all fungible, we know from a trading and a liquidity point of view has solved it. And also at a gameplay level, it has evolved to a different gameplay without completely disrupting the play itself, right? So this would evolve everywhere, I would say.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys. I'm sorry, but we have to break for...
No problem.
We have to break for tea now. We have a 20-minute break. We'll come back. This hall will be split into 2. In this hall, after the break, we have Kevin from CropByte speaking, and the other hall, we have Stephen from Wendy speaking. Yeah, see you in 20 minutes, guys. We're running a little late, so we'll start rushing up after now. Thank you.